A billionaire left his safe wide open and pretended to sleep. My 6-year-old walked in with her pink gloves and straightened his messy stacks of cash, and that tiny, honest act lit the fuse that changed our lives. My name is Diana Jefferson. I clean offices at night and hold my chin up in the daytime, and I'm about to tell you how a test I didn't ask for turned into a fight I couldn't avoid. You know what I mean when life decides it's your turn and doesn't bother to warn you. I'd worked the night shift at Mitchell Enterprises for 2 years, quiet halls, lemon cleaner, city lights like a second ceiling, and I brought my daughter Jasmine on school breaks because I couldn't afford a sitter, and because she is careful, gentle, the kind of kid who lines up pennies by year. That night, Thomas Mitchell was in his leather chair, with his eyes half closed, a drawer cracked open showing more money than I'd ever seen up close, and my heart thumped, because where I'm from, you don't even look too long at something that isn't yours. I whispered, "We clean, we don't touch," and turned to the bookshelf, but I heard that little shuffle of order, not stealing, not sneaking, just Jasmine sorting the bills by number like we do our laundry. And when I said, "Baby, we don't touch the boss's things," she whispered, "It was messy, Mama. Everything should look better when we leave." Mitchell opened his eyes, didn't scold, just nodded at her like she'd told him a secret he needed to hear. And 2 days later, my pay went up under something called category adjustment. No speech, no spotlight, just a small mercy that paid for new shoes and a little breathing room. Mercy doesn't sit well with everybody. Enter Richard Blackwood, vice president by family tree. The kind of man who was born on third base and tells the world he hit a triple perfect suit smile that never reaches his eyes. He noticed the Rays laughed at the idea a cleaning woman could be excellent, said things like, "Where these people belong, and if you've ever been talked about like your furniture, you know the sting. Yeah, that happened." He cornered me in a hallway and told me this wasn't a daycare. He stopped me in the garage with Jasmine's hand in mine and said, "I know how women like you get extra money, and I felt anger try to climb out of my throat, but I swallowed it because my child was watching, and because jobs are fragile when your bank account is thin." HR Director Sandra Miller started asking careful questions documenting, and Thomas watched the security feeds at odd hours, with a face that looked like winter turning into spring, slow but real. Here's what broke it open. Thomas called in an old friend, Marcus Chun, ex-FBI, polite voice eyes like a scanner, and Marcus started pulling thread after thread. He found the quiet history complaints from Black and Latino employees at places Richard had worked before settlement, whispers, nasty jokes in private groups, and then the worst thing, a phone call where Richard asked his father to create legal problems for me, maybe a theft, maybe paperwork issues, whatever, would push me out. And I swear to you, my hands shook when I heard about it, because I knew that move, I've seen that movie. Marcus told Thomas the plan was coming fast, a luxury watch planted in my cart, a performance for the cameras, a call to the police to make sure I learned my place, and I tucked Jasmine's braid under her hoodie that night and told her to focus on her math, and I breathed like a runner at the blocks, calm on the outside, lightning on the inside. The twist you're waiting for happened at 8:20 p.m. Richard walked in with 2 guards, like he owned gravity, put on a gentle voice that fooled nobody. Went straight to my cart and pulled out a $15,000 Rolex with theater hands and said, well, look what we have here." I said, "I've never seen that in my life." Jasmine stood up, voice shaking. "My mom didn't do anything," and he snapped. "Be quiet, child. Adults are talking." And that's when something in me stood up, taller than I am. "Don't talk to my daughter like that," I said. And he smirked like a wolf at a fence. One guard lifted his radio, already saying the word police, and then the office door opened, and Thomas walked in with Marcus and 3 people wearing news badges under their coats, and the air changed like a storm had just decided to show itself. Thomas didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He said, "Maybe hold that call," and when Richard tried the old, "We found your missing watch." Thomas looked at his Apple Watch and said, "I've never owned a Rolex," and then Marcus tapped a tablet and played 3 camera angles of Richard tucking that watch under my rags 40 minutes earlier. Angle 1, angle 2, angle 3. No shadows to hide in. And then the receipt from the jeweler, the credit card. Ping the audio of Richard telling his father it was a matter of principle to keep these people from getting comfortable. And I watched the calculation drain out of his face like someone pulled the plug. The reporters asked if he wanted to comment on staging a theft and targeting minority employees. He muttered about rights. Thomas said, "You have the right to remain silent, and you should use it." And the guard quietly canceled the call, because the only person getting cuffed that night wasn't me. When the police arrived, they read a very different set of words: conspiracy to fabricate evidence, harassment, racial discrimination, attempted defamation, and Richard tried to sprint for the elevator of his old life, but there was nowhere left to go. Now the part after the fireworks. Thomas had already moved to buy out the Blackwood family's shares. The board met in an emergency session. The bank accounts went on ice, and the man who treated cruelty like policy finally met a policy he couldn't bend. Sandra filed the documentation in neat folders. Marcus delivered his report with 14 tabs, and I went home and sat at my little kitchen table and cried into a dish towel, not from pain this time, from the shock of being believed. Thomas apologized for the test with the safe, said he had lost faith, and then watched my little girl arrange money like it was sacred, and he told me he'd been testing the wrong people, and for once I didn't have to translate a rich man's words into something true. He meant it. He asked me to step into a new role, Director of Human Resources, finish my degree on the company's dime, and help build systems that protect dignity in every hallway. And I said yes with my whole tired, hopeful heart. 6 months later, we had a scholarship program for employees' kids and a fair chance initiative that opened doors for people who rarely even see the doors. And Jasmine had a tour at a school that used to feel like a movie set. And she whispered, maybe me and I nodded, because dreaming out loud is a muscle you have to practice. Our company started winning awards, but the award that mattered was how it felt to walk into work without ducking your spirit. And if you've ever had to make yourself small to survive, you know what I'm saying. Richard did his time, tried to build a new name out of old habits, found out search engines don't forget. And that's not my joy, it's just the echo of choices catching up. We went on with our lives, and one night a CNN segment ran about how a small act of honesty rewired a corporate heart. And I watched Jasmine point at the screen and say, "That's us." And I laughed and said, "That's people finally paying attention." Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, and I want you to sit in it with me. Was the sting too public? Was the humiliation too sharp? Do too hard moves make a right? Some folks say justice should be quiet, that you fix rot in the walls, not with a spotlight. And I hear that. But I also know what quiet can hide, how many women like me have been framed on paper and erased in meetings, how many kids like mine learn too early that power means never having to say, please. If a camera keeps one hand from planting a lie in someone's cart, I can live with that light. And if you disagree, tell me why. Tell me where you draw the line between accountability and spectacle, because we need that conversation as much as any policy manual. I'll finish the way I live, simple and forward. We return what isn't ours, we guard what is, and when someone tries to take your dignity, you document, you speak. You find allies who don't just pat your back, but stand at your side. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Was this justice or a show? Have you seen prejudice dressed up as procedure? Have you ever been tested by someone who assumed the worst and then had to learn who you really are? If this story hit a nerve, hit like so it reaches the person who needs it tonight. Subscribe if you want more real stories, told plain, and share this with someone who thinks kindness is soft. Kindness with a spine changes rooms, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it changes an entire company. Ossos.